Hey everybody, welcome back to the Alabaster Project. My name is Katie and I'm your host for today, and I am so excited for our conversation today. I have a family friend who I have known for a really long time on the podcast. His name is Bryan. And Bryan, I am so excited to have you. Thanks for joining.
No, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled.
Absolutely. So, starting out season 2 of the podcast, what I'm doing is I'm asking everybody a random question. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But you're a dad of 6 really awesome kids. And
Yep.
fun fact, I got to babysit them back in the day, long time ago. Most of them are grown and in college now. But what is your favorite part about being a dad?
We're kind of at the stage of life where we've got folks in like high school and even into university. And so for me, favorite part is just watching them grow and become kind of these really amazing, interesting human beings, right? So just watching personalities develop. So folks that are going down into rabbit holes because they really enjoy like the subject matter they're studying in university, or becoming articulate and just really just people skills that I don't even dream of having, right? Even as young adults, or humor. We've got one of our kiddos that just turned 14. His birthday, our family tradition is we let people pick out their birthday plates. And for the thing, his that he picked out aged to perfection.
Nice.
So, just this really fun kind of just stage of life of fun conversations as they're growing and processing. And so, yeah, I think that's the best part for me.
I love it. And I love getting to see all the pictures of them growing up and, where they're at now in life. It's just really cool. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Um, but a few months ago, well, it's almost been a year. It was last December. You reached out
Yeah.
and you're like, "Hey, can we have a conversation?" You were working on a project and you were wanting to know some social media best practices because that's what I do all day. And so we hopped on a Zoom call and we started talking about social media, but then it led into another conversation where you started sharing a project that you're working on. And the
Yeah.
more I heard about this project and the more I, was helping with a few bits and pieces of what you were doing, I just got a huge passion for what you're doing. And I just want to share this with as many people as I absolutely can. And so, can you tell us about the work that you're doing right now with Gethsemane Leadership Training?
Yeah. So I work for the Free Methodist Church, and specifically I work for the Free Methodist Church in Asia. And so what Gethsemane Leadership Training is, it's kind of the pastoral training, pastoral education arm of the Free Methodist Church in Asia right now. And so we specifically work with pastors that are moving towards ordination. And so a lot of times in Asia, if you feel like you're called to be a pastor, the church will say, yes, absolutely, we see this gift in you. And then they put you to pastoring. And then we come along as well and provide education while you're kind of like on the job training while you're working through. So we have 13 different modules that we take people through, everything from kind of basic kind of Christian beliefs, Bible survey, seeing it as a whole, talking about how justice and compassion play into church ministry, and kind of looking at things in holistic ways, um, inductive Bible study, preaching, kind of the whole realm of what you would think. And so part of what we do is we do this modularly and try to meet people where they are in ministry. So I know I don't know if that's the clearest explanation, but we come alongside people that are pastoral candidates and we're doing our best to invest in them. And that's really what our heart is. And so,
That's really awesome. And one of the things that really stood out to me when we were talking is the fact that there's over 4 million people in Asia. And I'm sorry, not 4 million, 4 billion. And
yeah,
of that 4 billion, most of them are practicing like Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam,
right,
some form of ancestral worship. And
right.
and most of them have never heard the gospel message. And so with Gethsemane Leadership Training, how do you bridge the gap between what they have known, like the ancestral worship, and then bridge the gap to helping them hear and experience the gospel?
Right. I mean, so the reality of Asia is this: is it's a half the world's population almost lives in Asia. Three of the four largest countries by population live in Asia. So the U.S. is number three, and actually Indonesia is number four with over 200 million people, and they're like a Muslim state. So what we do specifically is we bridge that gap by investing in the pastors. So we understand that in many ways, like it's hard for me to go in, like I can, but it's in many ways more effective, especially in the areas that we're working with some of the political or some of the cultural um, issues that we face in Asia with some of the countries, to for us to be able to go in and kind of really invest in and work with pastors. The truth is, oftentimes we as Westerners step in and we might look at a church and think, oh man, we feel like there's a lot of syncretism happening where they're blending Christianity with other things. The reality of it is it happens to us as well in the US. We just don't see it. You know, we can blend our faith in our business or our faith in our politics in ways that ends up going crossways of the gospel. Um, and the way that we do that here is the same way that we do it there, is we just continue to root people in the gospel story. And so bridging that gap with leaders, we just invest in them. We'll mentor them, and the national pastors actually mentor them as well. Um, and so that's really. I hope I'm answering that. I hope I'm
Yeah.
answering that well. You know, it's conversations. It's I'm sitting with. I was with a group of pastors in Thailand last week and a half ago. We were working through a theology course with them, teaching on Zoom. Um, and basically, they're just asking questions. And a lot of the questions are trying to work through some of the realities of applying it. There was a church discipline issue that was popping up, and somebody who was living in ways that was completely counter to the gospel, and in some ways saying, hey, but I'm forgiven. Hey, but the Spirit is always with me and has promised to never leave. And in that moment, what I actually was able to do is the superintendent, the leader of the church in Thailand, was on the call too. And I said, hey, what if you speak into this? Knowing that he can speak in and really work through and teach and walk through the application of how do we take gospel truth and apply it in these situations in this particular culture in a way that's going to help these pastors thrive over the long run. And so then there's another about a 10-minute conversation where the whole pastors, they're just having this conversation with the leader of the church in Thailand, kind of walking them through this. And so a lot of times unringing the background that's coming out of kind of spiritism or ancestor worship or Buddhism. You know, it's a combination of just continuing to teach the truth of Scripture, and then to help them wrestle with what does that look like lived out in their countries. And so, in many ways, for us, that becomes a partnership. We've got some phenomenal leaders that we work with.
Incredible. I know.
So
Go ahead.
I was okay. Let me say this. I failed to
Yeah.
mention this earlier, and I hope it's okay. We kind of right now, from a training perspective, we kind of have three modes of doing it. Sometimes we go in person. We are physically in person with there, and we're on site alongside the people, and we'll spend 3 or 4 days working through a module of teaching. Often now we're also using Zoom post pandemic because they're used to it and it works really well. And there are actually places in the world where we cannot go physically, but we can be on Zoom that they can gather. But if we show up to teach, it creates all kinds of problems. But if we Zoom in, nobody cares. And so we're able to actually use technology to be able to do this. And then the third one that we're actually working on is the project that we were talking about, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit, is doing this through video so that we can get into those gaps that can't be met by Zoom or by being in person with them as effectively.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know it was probably about 2 years ago. Micah and we got to go to Thailand. And
Mm,
I fell in love with Thailand. I absolutely
right,
love the country. The problem is I'm allergic to the country. I'm allergic to peanuts.
right,
I'm allergic to shellfish. Not a good
yep,
combo if you're in Asia,
right,
because they
right,
cook with everything there. And so
yeah,
when I heard about what you were doing, I loved it because I was like, Lord, I can't physically go back to Asia, but being able to support, like, whether
Yeah.
financially or prayers or whatever, it's huge, and it makes such a big impact. And I remember when we were there, I was talking to a guy, and he actually had grown up in a monastery and was getting and he was being trained by the monks. And he was on that path to become a monk himself. And somebody in Asia shared with him the gospel, and it absolutely changed his life. And now he's able to go around and he is able to make connections with all these people. He ended up going to seminary, which is a lot of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And now he's using that to reach so many people for the gospel. And so you mentioned briefly
Mhm.
about the filming set, and what I think is so cool about that is when it's filmed, it's accessible anytime, any place. So can you talk more about the filming that you guys are doing in November?
Yeah. So just a little bit of background with this. So one of the realities we face in Asia when we're equipping leaders is it has to do with the geography where they're pastoring and where they're leading. It has to do with the education level that they've been privileged or able to have or not able to have. It has to do with the internet infrastructure that they are working with. It also has to do with whether they are bivocational or whether they're able to be full time pastors. There's a lot that's kind of in this. And so when we were looking at how can we continue to effectively engage with leaders, we have places like we have places like I need to kind of shield some things because of some of the places we're working in is sensitive. What we have a shorthand that we use, we call it CA, which stands for Creative Access, and then we'll give a letter of a country. So, like if we think about the country, what we call is CAN. The reality of it is it's mountainous, it's rural. There's a lot of people that are pastoring in some really rural areas to the point to where if we try to have Zoom calls, we've had some pastors have to climb trees to be able to get a signal to be able to engage there. And pulling them together is always good and helpful, but it's really disruptive and kind of expensive because coming from one side of the country to the other is really hard because it's mountainous and because they're in rural areas. It can take them 36, 48 hours to get there. There's other places where the pastors are just bivocational. And so to pull them out of work for 3 or 4 days, 4 times a year to be able to work with them starts to have some negative impacts for their families and their livelihoods. And so we're looking at these situations and going, okay, Zoom is working well here, in person works well in places. We have varying literacy rates. Our Asia leaders pre pandemic got together and they were praying and said, okay, what is an ambitious goal we can set for the Free Methodist Church across Asia? And they said, you know what? We really feel like we would love to see 1 million people influenced for Jesus. And it sounds crazy, but with the population density in Asia, it's doable. But if you break those million into churches of roughly 100, that's about 10,000 leaders they have to train. So then we're starting to think too of, okay, how do we do this in a way that is consistent but scalable? And so that's where the video idea comes in that we're able to provide really solid teaching and it's consistent across countries. Um, and so what we do is our team of people writes the scripts. Those scripts we film in English because that's going to be the best way to do it. And so we have a team that we're working with called 5 9 Creative. They're working with us and partnering with us to do the filming. They come in and we'll film. This time we're going to try to film 5 modules. It'll be about 10 days of really hard, long days of filming. And then once that's done, those modules will then get edited. The scripts are translated. We do voiceovers in country, and then they will dub they'll dub the they'll dub the videos with the voiceovers. And I know sometimes when you're talking to Americans who are like, "Oh, the lips won't match." Well, most people in Asia watch movies that are translated into English anyway, from English anyway. The reality of it is, though, what that allows us to do with this is we can reach into areas, we can put our training on an SD card, take it out into a rural area. That person then has access to it offline in their language. then the pattern is they will watch a few videos and then get together in a small group, either with a mentoring pastor or a small group, and will provide a leader guide, and there'll be conversations facilitated. Um, and so the filming we're going to do should film out the rest of our remaining modules. Hopefully, that's what we're shooting for this November. Um, and then we'll spend 2025 doing a lot of work on voiceovers and editing and dubbing and getting ready to really launch. So
Can
I
you?
may have given way too much information, and if I am, I'm sorry.
No, no, this is
So
great. This is great. Can you share, like, how much does it cost to film one module?
to film a module is about, sorry, I should have had these numbers for you ahead
Oh,
of
you're
time, so I'm
fine.
trying to do some quick math in our head. Um, to film the modules, it's around $4,000 a module to film it. It'll cost us maybe just a hair over by the time we bring the film crew in. By the time we bring in leaders, so our national leaders are actually the ones on camera. It's as much as appropriate. We want to give a representation of the broader Free Methodist Church in Asia. And so that people see folks, one, that come from their country that they will know, that are their leaders, and two, they'll understand that the church is bigger than them and they're a broader connected kind of network and family of churches. So when we bring people together to Thailand, which is an easy way and an easy place to kind of get people into to film, um, so it'll cost us about $4,000 to $5,000 a module roughly. So filming will be $20,000 or so to film three modules, something like that.
And
So
can you share, because I think it is helpful for people to know where you're at in the funding process of the
yeah,
videos.
yeah. So far we started our first filming session was last November. We have filmed six modules. We have them completely filmed. We'll have our first two completely edited in the English baseline. Should be in the next week or two, and then we'll continue to jump in. We're trying to film these last five. So at this point, we have fully funded the first three, both for filming, editing, translation, all of that. The second three, we have the translation and the dubbing funded from a donor. We still need the editing for that one to be filmed. It costs about $3,000 a module to edit it, to do all the video editing, to line it up, to get it looking professional. And then for the filming that's coming, we've got the final five to film. We're looking at probably close to we're filming more because overall we feel like it'll be cost effective to kind of try to make one push to finish it out. So we're looking at it'll be about $25,000 or so for the filming of this, and we're still looking. We're still in the process. I've filled out some grant applications. I've made phone calls. We've got some people that we've got some funding that we're seeking, but any help with that or anybody who would love the partnership, that's what we would put it towards right now
Yeah.
is the filming in November. Yeah.
So I'll go ahead now. I'm jumping around a little bit,
Go ahead.
but I'm gonna go ahead and ask, like, if somebody wants to give or they feel led to give to what you're
Yeah.
doing, how do they do that? Where do they give? That kind of thing.
Probably the best way, the easiest way would be just we got a link tree set up. So a couple of them. You can go to mine, which is kind of the link dot what is it, linktr.e,
Mhm.
and it's /Bryan Williams. Or you can do the same thing, or the link tree that is it's a GLT underscore. I'm sorry, it's FMWM underscore GLT, and I'm sure.
I
And
can
so
link.
that'll have the different places that can send you ways that you can give towards the video project, to give online, and it'll also be there for how you can send in a gift by mail if you would like to do that. On mine as well, if you want to learn more, you can there's a way for you to set a place to meet with me. And if you're like, hey, we'd love to have you come and talk about this kind of stuff at our church, that's another way. Reach out, the contact info for me, and we can come in and kind of talk that through too.
Awesome. And I'll link that, all of that information that you shared in the show notes of the podcast. So if
Yeah.
people want it, they can get it
Yeah.
super quickly. But as you're talking about the filming process and bringing all the leaders in, what or why does the partnership with the national church leaders matter so much in this work that you're engaged in?
Right. So a couple of reasons, right? One is they're going to be able to. We've got some amazing leaders that we work with. So just like an example I gave earlier of a leader in Thailand that's able to come in and kind of really work through, this is how we can apply the theology to this specific circumstances. And it's theology that we've been working with and kind of working with and learning, that he's able to step in and say, okay, let's talk this through. And he does it in Thai, and this is what it's like. Um, there's any number, like we just have some really amazing leaders. And so what they're able to do is help bridge that gap, that they're able to take gospel truth and then help folks reason it out from their culture. This is what it's like. And so in many ways, what we get a chance to do is it's a partnership that we have some gifts that we can offer. The team that I work with of people, right? We've had the privilege to be able to study. We have experience in ministry. We're able to come in and do some teaching and offer this up. And we can offer this as a gift. And the reality of it is, we actually we receive a lot from our folks too. So I know sometimes in the US right now, there's a lot of folks that are really nervous about the cultural climate we find ourselves in, that the church is no longer the center of kind of the cultural universe, that we're not deferred to the way it was when I was a kid, right? For us, that's unnerving and scary. For the folks we work with, that's Tuesday, right? It's just, that's their experience. And so they are thriving communities of people who love Jesus, who are witnessing, who are planting churches amidst a lot of adversity, right? And for them, they actually can teach us how to navigate this part of our kind of cultural moment in a way that they've got skills that we don't. So they have gifts to offer us, and we have some gifts to offer them, and it matters really deeply. They're just things that, as we kind of interact with folks, right, as we're teaching, there are just some cultural stuff that I can't navigate as well as an outsider. But they can, and it becomes a partnership in investing in leadership for the next generation of leaders and raising up leaders for the churches that are being planted.
So, I mean, truly, this project is it's multi-generational, because
Mhm.
it's
Right,
not just impacting the leaders who are getting it now, like what they are taking, it will impact generations to come.
right. Well, and the other thing about it is, as one of the reasons we're doing video too, right, is it's a cohort, it's a small group model of doing it, where you've got a small group of people that are able to watch videos and then come together to process. That they process not just content, they process application. And it is giving, I feel like it is giving really solid national churches tools to help them continue to invest and develop their own leaders, right? That we're offering them these tools and it's our gift to them, and they help to shape and speak into it as we go. And so it's right, but they have now a way that they're able to really um, invest in their people, and then we also can know that the content remains stable across a multitude of languages. So we're investing in places. We're talking 9 different languages at least that we're working in and working around. Some countries will have multiples of that, and so again, it's one of those things to where because of that level of diversity, we've got to find a way to keep kind of a core that is standard, that's going to bridge across cultures. And then our national leaders get a chance to really then say, okay, this is how we apply that in this particular situation. Because each country and each context is going to be different. And sometimes it's different between urban and rural, even in one particular country.
Yeah. I mean, that is Like it is it
Yeah.
when you start breaking it down, it's like,
Mhm.
holy cow, there is so much that's
Yeah.
going into this one
Yeah.
project. It's
Right.
incredible. And I was thinking through recently I've seen different ways that God is working, like in the United States, of
Yeah.
on college campuses. I got to take a group of small group girls to, it was called Unite, and it was like revival breaking out on these college campuses. It was
Hmm.
absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
Watching hundreds of
Hmm.
kids getting saved, baptized is
Hmm.
awesome. And
Right.
then I have been following along recently as Jenny Allen is putting on, it's called Gather 25, where it's like a conference for 2 days where the whole, like she's getting the whole world together for this conference. Um,
Yeah.
but so like I'm seeing God do all of these really cool things right now. But how are you seeing God working in Asia?
So again, right? A lot of times we celebrate the big and where we
Hmm.
see the breakthroughs happening, and we celebrate the spots where it is leavening a lump, right? Where the kingdom breaks through in the bigness, and sometimes it's the kingdom breaking through in the small ways and beginning to shape. And so, in Asia, there's a country that we work with where it's basically had a coup. It's a failed state. The educational system isn't working. The banking system isn't working. The church there is rising up to fill the gap. So they are taking in children that have been displaced to keep them from being sucked into human trafficking rings. They are continuing to teach to help kids maintain an education level. In the midst of all of this and with a complete scarcity of resources, this church will plant at least 5 churches this year. So, right. So I'm dealing with the folks. When I was on the call with Thailand, they said, okay, so far this year, we've seen over 400 people come to know Jesus. We've had 80 something baptisms. We're planting our third church. And they are actually also investing in a neighbor country to be able to partner with things happening there to try to see the kingdom advance in another country nearby. I mean, you have one of the places that we're working. Um, Quick story. Like, this is the kind of people that we work with. A friend of mine who is a pastor in a country that I don't want to throw the name out. Gets a phone call. Somebody it was a place where they were starting the process of developing a church, and it was a rural place in this nation. And somebody called him and said, "Hey, would you come out for our Christmas outreach and would you give the message?" And he said, "Sure." And so hangs up the phone, and he feels like the Holy Spirit whispers to him, "Be prepared to spend the night in jail for this." And he kind of laughed at me and he goes, "It was interesting that that happened after I hung up the phone, not before. So I couldn't back out." And he said,
Right.
"Okay." So he goes, they do the event. As he's given the invitation, authorities come out of the bush to try to bust up what they're doing. Now, this is not their first rodeo. These folks have learned the way you deal with this is you just are gracious. And so he said, "Okay, everybody, look, I'm going to finish the invitation and I will go with you and answer whatever questions you want, but we're going to finish the service." And so he continues to just give the invitation, and they try to break it up. And he says, "No, no, 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 no. We're going to finish this and then I will gladly go with you." And so he does. So he gives an invitation, right? People respond. I met the dude that is now the pastor of the church there, right? Um, he goes with them he gets questioned, interrogated. They're coming hard at him, leveling accusations, asking him to sign paperwork, not to come back into these areas to do this anymore. And he says, "Look, I'm really sorry, I can't do that." And they're like, "Well, we're going to have to keep you in jail." And he's like, "Okay, let me call my wife." And what happens is they've learned that if you don't rise to the threat and you are gracious and love even the people that would persecute you, but you still like backbone of steel, but just as gentle and as gracious as possibly he can be. They didn't know what to do with him, so they released him. And so this is like, how do we see God at work? It's in these ways, right? Why is the church in Asia growing? It's in these ways. How can they teach us how to respond to adversity. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's no name calling, there's no none of that. It's just let me finish what I'm doing and I'll go with you. We're going to do this. Okay, but I'm not signing this, you know? And so yeah, so there's just I mean, I could continue to like tell stories of places where we've got pastors that are investing in young people and kids and really on ramping them in some really difficult situations, making sure that they have education while they're learning about Jesus and trying to help them, gain skills that will be marketable. Like we really see um, God at work in the midst of these just normal church ministries as people are and lives are being changed, right? And it's messy sometimes, but lives are being changed.
I think the other thing that I'm thinking about as you're talking about this is they have figured out, um, I don't know if discipline is the right word, probably endurance is probably the better word.
Mhm.
It is
Yeah.
such a much better great like level than even I think I have. I mean, I'm thinking about, man, I was frustrated today about like a small thing that went wrong. I'm like, oh, I'm ready to throw in the towel. And it's like, no, like that's not the answer. The answer is responding with grace.
And the thing about it is they'll be honest about the frustrations. What I love about these folks we work with is they'll be honest about the frustrations.
Mm,
They'll be honest about it. But what it doesn't do is call them to react negatively.
yeah.
Like they figured out a way to be able to interact with it. So I was talking with one of the pastors that we work with, and I'm like, and he's telling me stories like the one I told you before, right? And I'm like, you just need to teach us. Like, we need you to teach us. And he
Yeah.
looked at me dead in the eye and he's like, I have nothing to teach you. Like, what do you mean I have nothing to teach me? Like, come on, brother. Like, I've got some things that I'm willing and I can invest and I have skills, but I don't have this. I need you to teach me how to live this way. And he goes, we don't have anything to teach you. I'm like, I look at him weird and he just dead in the eye looks at me and goes, but the Holy Spirit will teach you if you'll listen to him. And
Oh,
then
man.
he's like, he will teach you what you need. And then he kind of chuckles. He says, and we'll share our stories. We'll share our stories to give some context to what the Holy Spirit can do and what he wants to teach you. And so, again, it's just, I get the privilege of working with just some amazing people and to hear, I laugh sometimes because I'm based in the States, so I'm teaching on Zoom and it's 1 a.m, right? And they act like I'm sacrificing something massive to stay up with them. And in my head, I'm like, you guys don't understand, right? I feel like I'm sacrificing so very little and learning so much from you, and you guys are on the front line, like laying it all out there, And so, anyway, it's a privilege and it's fun, and we're thrilled that we're in the middle of this project to try to create capacity for developing pastors and trying to do it in a way that we can do it where they are
Yeah.
as much as possible and do it in a way that is communal. That's not just watching a video and ticking a box, but it's I'm learning information and now I have somebody in my culture to process with and mentor me as I figure out what it looks like to pastor and lead. And the goal is that we give people skills that they finish well, that they not just start well, but they have the skills and the ability to finish well.
I just think like this is just such a beautiful picture of what the body of Christ looks like when we all start
Yeah,
working
it is.
together and we set
Yeah,
aside
it is.
differences and we just go all in. Ah,
Yeah, it
I
is.
love it, Bryan. I love it. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that the goal for this project is to reach 1 million people in Asia with the gospel.
The
And
goal of that, the goal of all of the churches across the Free Methodist Church in Asia is to influence 1 million people. Yep, that's right.
okay. And so as you're a part of this God-sized goal and you're like
Mhm.
chasing this down with your team, how do we lean into that? And how do we lean into the God-sized dreams that he's placed inside all our hearts and follow him well when maybe it will cost us, a night in jail, whatever it may look like. How do we not lose heart and lean in and follow with 100% obedience to wherever God is leading?
I, I'm going to answer this from like as an American speaking to Americans, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I was talking with one of my friends, the pastor friends in Asia, and he just point blank says, "You've just got to be okay with the pushback, right? I mean, you've got to figure out a way to be okay with the difficulty, with the hardship, with the pushback, and learn how to lean into that rather than draw back from it." And so I've been chewing on that one for quite a while.
Okay.
I've been chewing on that piece of advice um, from him for probably 6 months now, because I think sometimes as Americans we think, and I was often told, right, if God's in it, then it's easy. But I think actually sometimes it's the opposite. That if He's in it, it's actually not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard, and it's going to require us to have to lean into Him. It's going to require us to have to grow a lot, which actually our own growth gets really painful. And it's going to have to, He's got to stretch some things in us and reorient our hearts in ways that hurts, to allow us to become the people and to be a part of what He's doing in the world. I think that's the journey of the disciples, that they had a really fixed notion of what it was going to mean to be a follower of Jesus and who Jesus was going to be and what this is, right? And Jesus had to spend 3 years with them, and then they needed the infilling of the Spirit to finish the job, to continue to reorient their heart around what it means to actually follow Jesus. And so oftentimes I think for me, what I've been learning in this is I have to be okay with the in-between spaces. I want to get there fast. I want it to be done. I want it to be resolved. And I think it's learning to be okay with the in-between spaces, to let Him guide us and pace us as we go through. Um, but to continue just to let Him grow us so that He can make us who we need to be to live into the future that He's offering us. Because oftentimes it's not just about us doing something, it's about us becoming the types of people who can fulfill the mission and calling that He has on our lives. And so if it's God sized, it's going to be God sized. And sometimes for us, I think as humans and as Americans, it's hard, right? Because for us, we get on Amazon and have something shipped 2 days, maybe even a day if we're lucky, and it shows up at the door, transaction completed, it's all good. But for these bigger goals that He has for us, and the bigger kind of callings that He's calling us to lean into, it's not that.
Yeah.
It takes a little
No,
more. So I don't know if I'm hitting to your question. I don't know if I'm actually
it
able to like speak to that in ways, but I think,
no, it was
you know,
great. Like honestly, it was what I needed to hear because I was telling the Lord this morning, there's, been a project I'm working on and it's hard and it's difficult and I'm like, God,
right.
I thought you said to do this. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. And it's that reminder of like, no, like if God's in it, it will be difficult. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's challenging,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
I think the process of like what I was reminded of when you were talking is it's about the journey. It's not so much about the destination. And I think that is where I find myself struggling a good bit of time because I'm like you, I want to get there, be done, camp out there, but it's how we're growing in the journey.
Absolutely. So I've been sitting a lot over the past 6 months with the book of James, and I just want to argue with him a lot,
Yeah.
right? Consider, like, how does James start, right? Whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because the testing of your faith works endurance. And endurance needs to have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete. And so I fight that, right? I wish it, I'm learning as I get older to lean into that and to understand that some of this is about God. Maturity comes with time, with perseverance, with leaning in rather than pulling back. So,
So so good.
yeah,
So as we're talking about this, like obviously there's so many challenges that go into this huge project that you are working on.
yeah.
How do we pray for you? How do we pray for the church in Asia
Hmm.
as y'all are navigating this?
So let me break that into a couple of things. One, for the church in Asia, um, just pray that they will continue to just lean in and be faithful. They already are. Some of the places we're working are facing increasing kind of difficulties. There's always, when somebody comes to know Jesus, even if there's not political pushback, there's communal pushback and community pushback, and it takes a lot of wisdom to navigate that. So just pray, right? I mean, that God will just strengthen them in the situation where they find themselves, that they will be able to live out kingdom values in a way that's cross cultural and in a way that just continues to speak to the folks that they're encountering. Um, there are a couple of places like in where I mentioned earlier that is really remote, uh, where there are anti-conversion laws in the books, and sometimes those get enforced in ways that are more strict. And so there's seasons where it gets really rough. There's the one country, um, which we call CAMY, which has basically been an acute coup for the past 4 years, and is just the church just needs a lot of prayers for strength and provision, and but they're continuing to plant churches there. So for them, um, that's what I would suggest praying for. Um, for us, um, I think wisdom. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of different balls and facets to this, and so we just need wisdom for timing. We know we need wisdom for how to approach things and when. We're entering. We work with volunteers. It's our leaders that are on camera, and even some of the other leaders in the church that do the voiceovers. So there's a lot of just trying to get voiceovers done and figuring out who's the right person for it. And we're, our national church leaders need wisdom for that to try to help and kind of corral all the files and stuff to make that happen. And then if you'd pray for us as we're starting the process of figuring out, okay, who are the first people that we can equip to be able to kind of put our first modules in practice. All right, we're hoping that by the end of the year, we'll have our first one that's completed in at least 2 languages. Um, and so that way we'll start actually the deployment process. And so we'll need our first kind of cohort of ministry candidates, pastors in training. And we'll need our first couple of mentors and facilitators to kind of walk through the curriculum. And so just getting the right people and creating the right communication loops, because we're going to be testing it, right? And as you roll it out, like what are the wisdom with what are the obstacles they're facing? How do we need to address that? What does this look like so that we can build systems and build training and build kind of do this in a way that really can make a big impact, not just now, but for the next season of the church there. So I don't know if sometimes I talk a lot, so I apologize. So I don't know if I actually answered the question
No,
or
this is
what.
great.
So,
I'm taking
you
it
know,
all in. I'm
I
taking it
need
all
my kids, I need my kids on the line because they keep me honest and keep me less intense. So believe it or not, Katie, I can get intense. Did you notice
No
that
way.
about me? I know it's just shock, right? It's just an absolute shock. So
That's so funny. Well, how can people, if they want to stay connected with you personally and what you're
yeah.
doing, how can they connect with you?
So you'll throw the link tree up for us.
Hmm.
That's a great way to do it. With that one, you can sign up for our newsletter that's there. We send out regular communication. Ooh, look.
Oh, look, you
You
got
got
a
the thumbs
thumbs
up.
up. I
Right?
didn't know I did
I
that. That's
did.
cool.
We send out some regular communication that kind of gives people a little window into our family as well as a window in the work that we do. Um, there's also a place on there where if they just want to talk, learn more, ask questions, figure out what this is really all about, they can actually set a meeting on me with me. And we can talk by phone or by Zoom or just to kind of you know, just because this is a big thing and there's a lot of moving pieces, and if people want to learn more, I'd be happy to help them. There's also I can send you links. There's the link trees also have links to a couple of overview videos that we've done, just a couple minute videos. So
Great. That's great. And then I will add, you're not going to add this, so I'm going to say it, but people can also support your family directly because
right,
you get paid to do this by people supporting you directly. And
yeah,
so if you want and you feel led to support Bryan and his family and the work they're doing, you can also give directly to him on the link tree as well. So just throwing that out there too, Ryan.
no, that's totally fine. I'm happy with that. That's good. And so again, right, and I am on Instagram sporadically. Like I'm trying to get better at it, but we have family stuff. I throw family stuff, work stuff. I don't have a just a dedicated. I mix it all together there. So
Love it. Love it. Love it. Is there
so
anything? Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say if you guys would pray for us, we're with filming in November. Right before that, we also have a big leadership conference that we're doing. Annually, every year, we pull together. There'll probably be somewhere between 150, 175 leaders from all over Asia. We're talking as far east as India and a little further east from that, all the way to Fiji
Wow.
and even south to like Australia. So, kind of blanketing Asia,
Ooch.
we'll have leaders all together. And so it's a time for connection and for worship and for just, it's a great time for us all to just kind of be face to face and share stories. What's God doing? What's going on? Where's He meeting us in the challenges? And for me, anyway, it's a great time to be able to be there and actually, just do a little bit of deeper connection with people and just meet them. So that's taking place in early November. And
Okay.
then right on the tails of that is when we'll start to film. So
Incredible. You got a busy November.
I do. I have a busy November. But it's good, right?
Yeah.
It's fun, and it's also fun because I have kids lobbying to go with me now. I've
Oh,
got
that.
two of my kids that are
Oh,
trying to.
yeah.
I usually travel with one of them, right? And so there's a little bit of a squabble happening, right? Of one lobbying to go, even though it's not their turn, right? You know how
Oh,
that
I love
works. You
it.
don't know anything about siblings lobbying to like be able to, right? Your household was just, there was no lobbying ever going on, right? Between you guys.
Man.
So it's really fun. I actually love it that we get a chance to, that I get a chance to travel with them and they get a chance as well to see the work that's going on. So
So cool. That is so cool. Well,
yeah,
is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
I just thanks. It's good. And I apologize in advance if our post at the end of this thing, if I have given a whole lot of information and it's been a little scattershot. So the project sometimes is really big and a little bit difficult to explain. So thanks for bearing with me, Katie, and thanks everybody for bearing with me as I've tried to kind of explain this thing here.
I learned so much, took so much away from this conversation. I'm so excited for people to hear it. Um, I can't wait for people to get involved because what you're doing, it matters so
Yeah.
much. And so
Yeah.
thank you for hopping on with us today. It's an
Oh,
absolute
thank you.
blast. And yeah, well, you're welcome back anytime, Bryan.
Yeah, just let me know, right? I mean, hopefully I'll try to be more behaved or a little less intense next time.
Oh, this is great. This is great. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we cannot wait for you to join us next time.